Have you ever wondered where Doodler goes when he's sucked into the page? On this day, Doodler was just happily going about jumping when suddenly he got sucked into the black hole on the page. Normally he would just black out and go right back to jumping, but this time was different. Out of the darkness he could see two glowing capsules, a green one and a purple one. A sinister voice called out to Doodle from the dark depths of the chasm.
After this, there is no turning back. You take the green capsule, the story ends, and you go back to your normal life. You take the purple one, I can show you what power you can really have.
What most beings didn't know is that Doodler lived for curiosity, and without so much as a second thought, he swallowed the purple capsule, and what followed was a transformation like no other. Doodler was consumed by the dark purple energy. He felt his body changing. Doodler had turned evil. Plenty of people had recreated the iconic Doodle Jump, but I really liked the unique idea of putting a dark twist on it. I drew out a rough plan on my scribble pad of the ideas that I had. I knew I wanted to stick with the darker colour scheme for this game, and I put some colours together that felt vampire-y and evil. In the original, the background is just a plain square ruled page, and for mine I wanted it to be something darker. So I experimented with some watercolour brushes in Photoshop and came up with this dark wash splattered messy page. I knew I wanted Doodler to still look like Doodler, but I wanted him to be purple and I wanted him to look more intimidating. So I plonked some really cool hair on him and gave him some Dracula type clothes with a very exaggerated collar, and also the expression on his face is a bit angry. I started my Unity project and got the basic mechanics down, so I made the player jump off the platform, and the way this happens is that the platform applies a jump force to the player when they collide. Then I added some X-directional movement so you can move across the page, and next was the level generation. This was of course going to be randomly generated, so I set a min and max value of the spacing of the platforms and also restricted them to the width of the game window. I had an initial number of platforms that would spawn, but as soon as they became invisible to the camera, they would destroy, and every like 10 distance upwards, it would generate another number of platforms, essentially making it endless. For the follow cam, I used Cinemachine, and I added a simple scoring system that would be based on how far you traveled upwards. I also added this scrap paper edge at the top of the screen where the score could be placed. I wanted to keep the original features like the spring, the flying hat and moving platforms in the game, so I drew them with my theme in mind. For the spring, I added some thorns on the spring to give it a barbed wire feel. For the flying hat, I thought it would be cool if I had a skull object. It's like a skull hat with a little flying thing on top. So I drew the animation for the doodler as well as the actual item. I then incorporated them into the scenes, and I just kind of applied the same platform script to them, but they would add a different jump force when the player collides with them. I have to say it's nice and refreshing to be able to draw for this theme of game because it's sketchy, and if your drawings are a bit wonky, it doesn't matter, it's fine. It's even better maybe, because any mistakes just add character. I also introduced some moving platforms and some broken platforms that you can't bounce off. I did have a small issue here because I wanted the broke platform to be its trigger, but then I couldn't use the relative velocity method. So I found a workaround, and I just referenced the player's velocity in another way and made sure that it would only break if the player came from above. I then adjusted the level generation to feel challenging enough but not too hard. I designed it so the further you go up, the more boost items will spawn, and also the spacing of the platforms will change, so it will become more challenging, and you have to be more tactful of where you're jumping. I was ready to make the main menu, so I drew some wonky UI buttons and just got started. I got the font from DaFont, which is where I get most of my free fonts that I use in all my projects, and then I just converted it to a Text Mesh Pro font. I just kept it simple with a start and a quit button, and I just arranged it and added the word evil on top of the Doodle Jump to make sure people knew it was evil, you know.
Ow.
And I also did a similar style for the game over screen. I wanted to include a high score system because I thought it was a bit pointless if you're not kind of beating your own score in the game. What's the point of playing them? It was actually really easy. You can just use player press to store the high score, and it will only store the score if it's higher than the last score that is stored in the high score. Hope that made sense. Then I linked this to the high score text so it would update. I did want to add some enemies like the original one, but I kind of run out of time and I had to make this video, and I could go on and on with all the items that I could add to this game. Lastly was adding sound effects, my favorite part. Once I put them in, I hit publish and the game was done. Of course it's on itch.io for you to try it out, but now it's time for the final reveal.